We have some alternative channels, and they're going to expand, and some exposure to them is wise. Online will grow. And given that online primarily is competing with a supermarket shopping experience, it's a pretty good bet. No, I'm not trying to discredit the supermarkets, but it is not the top of people's most favourite list of things to do. If you've got another way of doing that, not all of them, but some will welcome an alternative, and that stuff's getting quicker and faster. And it's going to merge with new media. That'll put them together. And as a closing thought, you need to think about investing and understanding the demand frontier. Because if you don't, all you're likely to be left with is renovating or trying to add to something someone else has built. And it's not quite the same as if you haven't built it yourself. Thanks. Thanks for the chance to talk. Welcome the chance to share more of that at our trade show stand. Thank you. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Martin. We have a few minutes for questions. Difficult to see any questions from the audience? No? Oh, yes.
Why do you think they'll be doing that if the statistics show an 80% growth?
So for the audience, the question is, Martin's talking about the increase in prepackaged products, and our guest has said he's hearing opposite from the main chains.
Look, I think it's a debatable issue right now. You've got some categories that loose will be better for, and that's probably where retailers would want to go. Some other categories, there's all the justification in the world to go down the pre-pack. And we've seen it drive premiumness and growth, and better varieties. The other interesting thing is, and I think one of the things that sparks the debate is, there's a belief in the industry that if it's in a pre-pack, it's actually poor quality. And I guess research that we've done doesn't suggest that at all. When we've asked consumers, we've asked over 10,000 households, what does quality produce mean? And one of the things that came back to us was they didn't believe that package-free meant better quality. So again, that is certainly coming through. So, I do want to put it out there that you can get a good quality produce in pre-pack and drive premiumness, and I still think it's the right strategy for some products, not so much others. It hasn't worked in all categories, and I think that's probably why there's a bit of controversy. So you need to be smart about how you have that conversation with your retail customers for your categories. Yep.
It does a number of things. A product in a pre-pack solves a lot of operational problems for the supermarkets. It gets identified cleanly at the front end. We ask a lot of consumers about packaging and fresh produce. 90% of the time they'll say they don't like it. It's not reflected in what they do. Okay? They will buy things. The demand for convenience, in our view, is the strongest demand that's there, and the ranges that have extended into smaller pre-packs and smaller portions are all growing pretty strongly. So I think you've got some pretty strong sales-based support for the fact that packaging has a role, pretty clear role, and in my view, more of that as we're catering for smaller households.
Thank you. One more? Alice.
Brian Silverman with PMA. If I can make a comment on that, I think the Costco experience in the United States has shown the value of packaging, not just for smaller units, but also in terms of what it does for quality protection of the product itself. And there are US retailers today who have predicted that in 5 years, the vast majority of grapes will be sold in clamshells rather than in flexible packaging, for precisely the lessons that Costco has learned in terms of quality control of a product all the way through. So I would just add that as well.
Thank you, Brian. One more. Whoever gets the mic.
Jared McEverly. Martin, you said in the pressures, the list of pressures that you were talking about, at the production end, we're leaving too much in the ground. Can you just expand on that slightly? Is this a production failing, perhaps a failing by the retailers, or just the usual lack of communication along the chain?
Jared, I think that the yield that we are extracting out of what we produce could be better. I think there's too much product staying back in the pack house or back in the field, and if we looked at the opportunities for that to come through, particularly in different fresh forms, we can get a better yield at that end. We're too focused on a narrow range of grade, and it would help if we could do that. That's where I would come.
Thank you. One more. Okay.
Frank Van Ryn, tomato grower from New Zealand. Martin, you gave the example of the media's influence with the E. coli breakout over in Europe. How does industry prepare itself for, or how do they work their way through a situation like that? How do they control it? How do they, I don't know, counteract loose statements and what have you?
That's a very good question to put to the Spanish cucumber growers or the German sprout growers. I think we're getting to the stage where all you can do is have contingencies in place, and the pace and speed of the new media has just upped the bar. You must have risk management strategies in place for that sort of thing. The fact that it can spread so quickly from uninformed, uncredentialed comments means the risks are higher. And if we haven't got that covered as an industry, and we do to some extent, in some cases quite well, then we have increasing exposure because of the speed of the media.
Okay. Thank you. To Martin and Yahya, thank you for this session. We got a little gift for you from Fresh Connections. That concludes this, the first of the early morning session. We now have a break until 10:30 for morning tea out the back, and just a reminder, we'll be starting at 10:30 sharp, so please be back on time. Thank you.